Welcome to AvPlan EFB, Webinar for Beginners, Part 2. My name is Krisha and I'll be leading you through the webinar this afternoon. AvPlan Webinar for Beginners, Part 2 will be focusing on simple flight planning. So let's get started. When you first open AvPlan, you'll see the screen as mine is here with your previous stored plans on one side and your map on the other. As I mentioned in webinar part 1, there are many ways of doing the same thing in AvPlan, and this applies particularly when it comes to setting up flight plans. So let's take a look now at the multiple ways we can begin starting a flight plan. Let's commence by pressing the button at the top, New Plan. New Plan will open your flight log, and your flight log will always defer to the aircraft that you used last. To go back to your stored plans, go back to stored plans here. Your time in UTC is here. Your aircraft call sign and power setting. Here is one of the ways that you can begin your flight plan. Here is another. First of all, let's decide what kind of rules we're going to be flying under. And for the purposes of today, we'll choose VFR. And we'll put AvPlan in flight mode here. Once we build the plan, these areas will be populated with the details pertaining to our journey. Another way you can start a flight plan is to go down to the planning pane here in the corner and tick New Flight Plan. Let's go back now to the en route page and commence a simple flight plan. Now, as I said before, there are many ways of building a flight plan. Let's look at all of them now. Way number 1 is to press the plus here at the top of the nav log. And in here, we can simply type the airport that we're at. We can search for primary, alternate, direct to, can add there. We're starting at Bankstown as I put in YSBK. So let's add that to the plan by pressing on the little plus button here. And here we are. We have our first point in the plan, Bankstown, which is where we're going to commence our journey today, nearby here. Pinch in a little. There we are. Great. The second way we can add a point to our flight plan is we can add it here by simply typing it in. Pop your finger on the green panel and type in your next point. Let's go to Camden. And here we are. Bankstown to Camden. Another way we can add a point is to simply tap on the map at exactly the point we want to go or nearby. And we talked about map functionality in webinar 1. So you all know by tapping on the map, you will always get your nearest items box. And let's search by airports by tapping on the airport button. And let's add Shell Harbour, the old Wollongong there. And now you can see we have 3 points. Bankstown, Camden, Shell. To remove a waypoint, simply tap on it and press delete. Now we're going directly from Bankstown to Shell Harbour. Another way of adding points into AvPlan is by rubber banding your track. So as you can see here, we have our restricted airspace turned on and our track is taking us right through Holdsworthy here, which is a military airspace. We can see by double tapping on the airspace that it is indeed active. And so we need to plan around it. So now let's pick up the line with our finger, flight track with our finger, and drag it to where we want. Drop it. And up comes our nearest items box. Let's re-add Camden into our flight plan. There we are. So now Camden is in our flight plan. So we're going once more, Bankstown, Camden, Shell Harbour. Okay, so that is working through a very basic flight plan. Let's begin with this very basic flight plan and have a look at some of the other things we can do when we are making our flight plan before we go ahead and file it to NAICS. So first things first, we can name our flight plan. So let's say this is beginner's demo. Forgive my absence of apostrophe there. Beginner's demo. And then when you go and look in stored plans, and I'll show you this later, beginner's demo will be there. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to take a look now at the flight planning icon, and this will help with our workflow. Excuse me. So let's refer to this as a checklist, working our way point by point down the list until we get to the bottom. So we've done new flight plan. Import previously filed flight plan is a premium feature. By tapping on it, you can enter a call sign and search under that call sign. There, nothing. Nobody's been flying because of COVID, so there's not much to show you there. But that's how it works essentially. Next, let's take a look at our altitude optimizer. Here it is. So what it's done is it's taken the information from the aircraft that we've put in, which today we've selected from this drop down of all the aircraft we've ever used. You may only have one if you only fly one aircraft. I, of course, have many. So we've taken Foxtrot India Romeo, which is a Generation 3 Cirrus, and we've fed the information about that aircraft. Let's find it so that I can show you. Here. So we filled this in when we filled in our aircraft in the aircraft database. Let's add an hourly rate. It's a Cirrus, so let's be realistic and say $400 an hour. There we are. Let's put $400 an hour. Let's go to wet. And as you can see over here now, that's been populated. So we now know how long, how much fuel, how much money this flight is going to take on our VFR flight levels for this plan here. So now let's choose an altitude and let's take 3,500. Hemispherically correct is in the green. So let's be hemispherically correct and add 3,500, and this will populate the flight plan. Now, we might not want to go at 3,500 for the entire duration, and in fact, we'll be busting airspace in Camden if we go 3,500 there. So we can change that to 2,500. But what happens when you start at the top is it populates the bottom one as well, because it assumes, AvPlan assumes you want to go at the same altitude. So we'll need to change that manually, or if we pop into fly mode, we can change our altitudes without them automatically populating. There. Okay, so now we're going to Camden, from Bankstown to Camden at 2,500 and over to Shell at 3,500. So let's come back now and have a look at our aircraft loading, weight and balance and fuel planning here. So AvPlan has made this very, very simple by setting up an envelope for you. Once you've entered your aircraft, you'll have your takeoff and landing weight here. If you don't have these, it means you've made an error in your setup of your aircraft. So you can come along here to this second icon. Just double check you've got everything in properly. And this is where you can also change your units and make amendments to your setup. So some people's POHs, they come in, they're printed in pounds. So you can flip over to pounds here. And that changes everything for you there. Or you can, now we're in pounds. So let's populate in pounds. Front seat. Me trying to work out my weight in pounds. Going to take a wild stab and simply say 180. Let's put 250 in the back. And I think, as I said before, in AvPlan, anything that's green is customizable. So when we touch it, we can change it. So now let's touch the baggage area and we'll just put 40 pounds of baggage in there. We're in a cirrus, so we've got some de-ice fluid. Let's put 70. In fact, let me show you what happens if you try to put too much de-ice fluid in. We get a red. So anytime you try and go outside the envelope or overweight, if you change your loading or your weight, AvPlan will alert you by changing the text to red. There, so let's go back now and make it a reasonable number. And let's fill it up with fuel, which we've kept in litres. 340 there, and here is our zero fuel weight. So we really have done all the work for you. We've got all the information about your aircraft. You've set it up originally when you set up your aircraft in Aircraft Database. So now we've got our maximum takeoff, our landing weight, and our zero fuel weight there in pounds. So let's change the people on board to 3. And because we're in Bankstown, let's give it some taxi fuel there. Let's put just 5 litres in there for taxi. Okay, it's really very simple. The only thing left to show you here now is a passenger manifest. So if you click on persons on board, you're flying an angel flight, for instance, or you're a commercial pilot, might be required to have a passenger manifest. So simply tap on the line that you want to populate with the weight of the person here and go back. And let's add another passenger in the back. Let's pop Bob in there at 190 pounds. And let's pop another one in the back too, Bob Jr. And let's say that Bob Jr. weighs 50 pounds. There we are. You can carry on. You can add your baggage. Let's put in 140-pound suitcase. And let's go back. Show you how that works. So now our loading has changed to say how many passengers we have in. If we want to know more about those passengers, simply tap on the line. And here's Krisha, 180 pounds. And in the back, here's Bob and Bob Jr. And in the baggage area, it's suitcase. Well, it says it's a person. So if we tap on that again, it'll turn into a bag. So we've gone from a person to a bag. There, de-ice fluid, I don't think we put anything in there. No, we didn't, but we can if we want to, and so on and so forth. So it's as simple as that. Now, if you want to view this manifest, let's go back to planning and scroll down to print, preview, load sheet. Now, we've only made a stage 1 plan because we're doing planning for beginners at the moment. So stage 1, click on that, and here's our manifest. So me, Bob Jr., Bob there, our aircraft loading. And this is what you would show to CASA should you get ramp checked. And they say, have you done your weight and balance, Sarah or Miss? This is what you'll show them, is your weight and balance, your fuel calculations. The date is at the top, the name of the pilot, the type of aircraft, and our fuel planning down here. So, of course, you can print this out if you choose and carry it with you. So that's not a legal requirement. You can keep it on your iPad here. So let's go back now to the planning pane and look at our PRDs for route. Well, we haven't made a very big flight, so there probably aren't very many. But if we do want to know about these PRDs or see where they are on the map, we can simply press the I button. It will show us exactly where they are in the map by highlighting them in red. This is the Bankstown training area, and the traffic here you can see in the training area moving around there. Let's go back to planning and have a little look at flight status. So once you've filed your flight plan with NAPES, AvPlan will continue cycling in the background after you've filed your flight plan to see if you've got any messages or if there have been any amendments to your flight plan. So if there's been an amended TAF, a change in the METAR, SIGMET, NUTAM, area forecast, it'll all appear here, and you will receive a little number 1 by flight status and a little number 1 down here in planning too. So if you're not on the flight planning screen and you get a little number 1 in flight planning here, then you know that there's something going on with your flight status. Pop in here and have a look for it. And we'll keep that for 8 hours for you. If you want to mark it as red, just tap the little button there to mark as red so it doesn't keep bugging you. There we go. So that's flight status. This is a relatively new feature, but what it does is it really maximizes what AvPlan does in the background by bringing you information. Next up is your user waypoint database. So 2 ways you can make a user waypoint, and we'll go over and look at both of them now. You can add one here by tapping add, name it and give it its latitude and longitude if you know it, or you can search from a street address, a known location, magnetic bearing, etc. here. Or we can do it my favorite way, which is to go onto the map and create a user waypoint. So as you can see, there's one I've made here earlier. I've got my waypoint switched on in settings so that you can see all the user waypoints that I've made before. Here, if you don't want to see those user waypoints on the map, untick here and you won't see the user waypoints you've made before. There we are. So I've just taken those off now so that I can make a user waypoint right here at Mount Kembla. So let's say we're flying from Camden to Shell Harbour and we want to stop and take some photos at our friend's house at Port Kembla. So let's create a user waypoint by tapping on the map to get our nearest items box. And the first item is always going to be add a user waypoint. So tap that and we've added the user waypoint. But the user waypoint is called 3462, etc., which isn't very catchy and isn't going to help us remember it. So let's tap on it again and let's edit that waypoint. Okay, so let's call it, oh, I'm running out of names in my database. I'm going to call it Sarah. I don't think I've got a Sarah. And then you see we have our lat and our long there. And if we scroll down, it's exactly the same as I showed you in the database before. We can have a look, but here we also have a pin showing us exactly where Sarah is. So if we think that's a little off, we know exactly where Sarah is, and let's say Sarah lives right here in this field, we can move it with the pin with our finger to exactly where we want it to be. A little tricky, keeps moving around. There we go. There we are, Sarah. I've moved you exactly where you are. If we pinch in now, we can see, oh, Sarah is actually in that line of trees. Let's move it over to what actually looks like it could even be an airstrip. There we are. That's Sarah's airstrip there. So every time I move that here, it's going to be reflected here. And of course, everything we do on the map is reflected in the flight plan over here. So here's Sarah. Now, I said we were going to go from Camden to Sarah to Shell Harbour, but what we've actually done is we've gone from Camden to Shell Harbour to Sarah. So let's change that now. It gives me a good chance to show you the magic edit button down here in the bottom left-hand corner. So tap on that edit button. And now you have much more customization of your plan. You can change here your TAS and your wind if you want to, but you can also pick your plan up with your fingers and slide it around. So let's take Sarah and put Sarah between Camden and Shell Harbour. And we've done that. And here's Sarah now. Let's go back down here and close off the marvelous delete button. Another way we can do this is by simply pressing on the point where we want to place Sarah and insert leg before. You can always insert a leg this way if you want to too. But what we've decided to do today is use the magic edit button and pick it up and down with our fingers here. This is where we can also delete a waypoint if we want to, or add another leg. And as you can see now, that summary that I told you about has started to populate. And here's where we can clear times if we're using an old plan, or we've made a flight plan and we want to make it a different time. You can clear your old tracks, fixes and passengers. You can also reverse. Let's reverse it now. There we are. Now we're going back home to Bankstown as well. So we've gone Bankstown, Shell, Bankstown. Or we could invert it, which will tip it the other way around, or we could append it, which means we can add it to another flight plan there. Let's switch the edit mode off now. And that was a quick look at user waypoint. So let's go back to planning. And you'll see Sarah is there. Now, AvPlan will store your user waypoints for as long as you want them. If you don't want them, you need to delete them by simply dragging your finger along the waypoint you want to delete until it goes away there. Or you can come up here to the edit button. As I keep saying, many different ways to do the one thing. So let's delete that one and go back to planning. Next up is our domestic flight plan form. And this you can print and take with you if you like to carry paper. And if you have a multiple stage flight plan over here, you'll have multiples here for your fuel. You can write in here your SAR time for arrival at, and we've calculated your last light there. And you can customize the way you view this flight plan by going to settings in the top corner and having it, if you prefer to have it single spaced, you can do that. I'm getting of a certain age where I like to have mine double spaced because it's just easier for me to read. You can have stage headings there, or you can flight levels, etc. As you can see, you can even print out a blank one and fill it in yourself. So that's your domestic flight plan form there. Now let's have a look at special route briefing. So this is one of my favourite features because in the old days, flying out of Bankstown, you had to print Area 20 and Area 21's weather. They're both massive regions. So what's great about the special flight briefing is it will just pull what you need for this route here, for this flight. So it'll just give you Bankstown, it'll give you Camden down there somewhere. If we keep on going, yep, there's Camden. I'm just going to scroll through slowly. Shell, but you've also got your GPS RAIM information there and all your NOTAMs. Scrolling slowly. And what I want to show you is all the way down at the bottom after we've scrolled through the NOTAMs and whatnot. We will come to, gosh, it's a long one. There we are. We'll come to the weather as well. Your graphical area forecast at the bottom there. Sorry, it's just scrolling a little slowly there. Bear with me as we zoom on through. Here we are, right to the end, where we see your graphical weather forecast at the bottom. So you want to make sure that this is all up to date. You can press the refresh button here, making sure that your briefing is the most up to date. And you'll see there, this briefing is prepared especially for you and your aircraft. And there's your date. So that's a handy briefing to have, and you can print that out under print send right here. So you can toggle off Area 20 and Area 21 and toggle on SPF briefing, and you'll just get your special briefing there. You can also email any of these or send them to someone else's app here. Okay, so before we go to file our flight plan, I'd just like to walk you through a few little other things we can do on the map, including flying a beam, which we'll do next. So to fly a beam somewhere, tap it, pop it in, and then press on it on the map over here. Oh, let's move it first because we put it in at the bottom. So let's take Wilton and pop it right after Camden here. There we are. And now let's tell it we want to fly a beam by pressing our finger on Wilton and ticking the pass a beam. And now it'll keep you out of this danger area, which is Wilton, which is a favourite for flying instructors to try and push you through when you're in your aircraft review. So to avoid flying through Wilton, knowing that it's a drop zone, if you do, then just press fly a beam and that will make sure that you don't fly in it, ensuring that you'll pass your flight review. There, so that's showing you fly a beam. Now I'm just going to show you a two-stage plan by showing you how you land. So let's land at Shell by pressing on it and saying land here. Now we have a two-stage plan. We're going to land at Shell and then we're going to take off again. So before we put in our flight plan, let's make sure that we give our ATD. So let's take a look at UTC up here. It's 0204. So let's take off at 0330 here. So you only need to put a 4-figure group in and it will populate it down for you. And that's our first stage. It's going to do our first stage. It's not going to do our second stage because it doesn't know how long we're going to be at Shell. So we can see we're landing at Shell at 0349. Let's say we're going to be half an hour at Shell. Just going to stop and say hello to some people there and then maybe take a look. See if HARS is open. If HARS is open, we can always change this time and stay a little bit longer. And so now we've got our return time at Bankstown at 0419. There, and we've done our two-stage plan. So now let's file that plan. Oh, first let me show you how to add a delay. Okay, let's say we get to Camden and we decide we want to take some photographs there. So we want to say we want to add a delay. And the easiest way to do this is to simply tap on Camden to open up the terminal page, which we talked about in webinar number 1. Anytime you want to open the terminal page, terminal meaning airports, you simply tap on the flight nav log, the airport that you want to open, and you can see now we've opened Camden, and here is our delay. So let's pop in a 15-minute delay for airwork here. There we are. We've made our delay, and here's our 15 minutes here. All of these times have changed. So now let's go down to submit flight plan. So we can, of course, just submit a SAR time. But today, we're going to submit a flight plan. So now what AvPlan has done is it worked in the background to fill in everything for you. So it's got all the details that you filled in when you did settings. It knows everything about your aircraft and it knows everything about the flight you're about to fly, your altitudes, etc. So it's taken all that information and you really don't have to do anything now, but you can change any of these things as you go down. As I said to you before in webinar number 1, if there's an arrow, that means there's a second menu underneath. So let's take a look now at flight rules. And let's say, for instance, we want to fly 1 IFR and 1 VFR. We can click on 0 and it asks us which leg would we like to fly. I'm not going to do that, it's too complicated and we're in VFR here. Just wanted to show you that it was a possibility. So let's change it back to V, the operation type and so on and so forth, number of aircraft. And here's all the golden information we have about our aircraft. If we tap on that, we also get a chance to change it here if we choose to do so. We're not going to change it. We default, as I said to you at the beginning, we default to the one you used last. But if you want to change that, and you realize that you haven't, and you're in your flight plan, you can change it here too. Your call sign and so on and so forth, performance category, transponders, etc. So it knows where we're departing. It knows how many people we've got on board because we told it over in the weight and balance section. We've even given them names and weights. And we popped our ATD in there, but we can also do it here if we want to by tapping on this little box here. And that will allow us to convert UTC to local by toggling like so. so we can see that at 1:30 is our ETD. It helps us work out UTC nice and simply. You can see our route here, direct Camden, and then it's put in that we're going to be flying a Beam Wilton, and it's converted Sarah back to lat long because of course Sarah doesn't mean anything to ATC, and that we're going direct. Our altitude, etc., our endurance, and we can change this if we want to right here by saying, maybe we made a mistake, so let's put 346 litres in instead, and that will change it there for you. Okay, en route time. We've told them that we're doing air work at Camden, and that's populated under remarks. And also, and it's told it there, the delay time. So the nature of the delay is here. The delay time is here, and we can change that here if we want to also by clicking on this box, but we don't want to. Special handling. If you're a special flight, you can click that one here. We've got our destination. We haven't done an alternate. And all we need to do is tell it our SAR time. So our SAR time is, we're going to land at, sorry, just click off there, 0419. So let's make a SAR time of, 5:04. It's made a suggestion for us. That's lovely. We'll have that. Thank you very much. We pop that in there. And there we are. That's stage 1. Stage 2, you can toggle here if you want to. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use the no send button. So that will still allow us to file our flight plan, but it'll come back as a no send. So when ATC see it, they know not to forward it on. So let's click the submit button now and see what happens. There we are, marvellous. Simple as, we filed a flight plan now. It's come back no send, so that we know we're not really sending it. If you do want to really send it, click no send off. That dinging you heard in the background, that's Nape sending me an email confirming this. So when we've pressed submit, bing, it'll go to Nape's, and also it'll go into AvPlan's calendar to remind you to cancel your SAR time 10 minutes before the flight. The SAR time is due. And you can cancel your SAR times in app over here in SAR times. Oops, I'm sorry. Over here in SAR time. And just pop in there on the one you want to cancel and press cancel SAR time. If you click on change via app, it'll do it in app. No need to call send SAR. There. You can also cancel your flight plan here by pressing delete next plan. And it's as simple as that. It'll ask you if you're sure. And if you are, press OK. And it will pop up and say it's cancelled. So that's a basic walkthrough of how to file a flight plan on AvPlan. Just to summarise, several different ways you can file the flight plan: using the plus button, writing in the box, or tapping on the map. The most simple way would be to put in where you are and your final destination and simply rubber band the flight track with your finger like so. We've walked through how to delete by tapping on the airport and going to the delete button there. If we want to see anything about the airport that we're going to, we go over to terminal and tap on that airport. And here's Camden. Don't forget, swipe for charts or give it 3 fingers on the bottom there for your charts. And we talked about that in webinar number 1. Okay, also I've shown you the edit button, but also let's talk about the refresh button to download the latest weather, and your aeroplane database, which of course you know, but if you want to change your aeroplane there, you can do so simply by pressing on one of those. And your wins on off button, ticks your wins on, ticks your wins off, and your email button here. So you can submit your flight plan through this too if you want to, if you don't want to go back to the planning pane. If you're in the cockpit and you want to make it quick, you can simply tap on this little button here. You can email it, you can AirDrop it, and you can send it. And this is in a GPX format, so it will be compatible with other AvPlan. You can send it to someone else's AvPlan and they'll understand it. We've also got here the FPL format, which you can send to Garmin handheld devices there. You can tweet, you can Facebook, of course, and you can sync via the cloud. And this will make sure that it's synced to all your other devices. They're using the AvPlan cloud service, and we talked about that one in webinar 1, but just briefly. Over to settings, into user settings, scroll down and make sure you've got sync flight plan, sync aircraft ticked on all your devices. Then that way you can simply sync everything over there. We talked about flying a beam, we talked about adding a delay, and we made a custom waypoint. So that concludes our demonstration today from AvPlan EFB for Beginners, webinar number 2, creating, filing, amending flight plans. It's great to see you all again. Thank you very much. And don't forget, if you ever want to contact us, little life ring at the top will put you straight through to me or Bevan. Have a fine day. Good afternoon.